Hi guys. So this is an introduction to a book I am writing called Lighthouse. Keep in mind that it is subject to change, but this is the first draft. You'll notice that I have subtitles. That's because I can get a bit overzealous with parentheses, and it can get a bit nonsensical if you don't realize the parentheses are there. So yeah, let's begin. Richard Manson was an aspiring author. Of course, he'd learned from his father that being an author rarely helped anyone, so he had instead decided to get his degree in a college that, if it had been any farther north, it would have been in Canada, and if it had been any farther west, it would have been floating in the Pacific Ocean. So, Washington. It had been his mother's idea for him to go to Washington, not to get a degree in engineering. She'd told him all about some relatives that he'd never heard of, living in a town that he, quite frankly, had never heard of. It didn't even have a name. The locals called it Lighthouse because the old lighthouse that perched on the edge of a cliff a few miles away from the town. It was, if you could believe it, rumored to be haunted. That's right. The occasional overzealous tourist would ignore the warnings and decide to go explore the relic of a building. They would overlook all the probable structural issues that were sure to exist in a building of that age and tromp right in. Idiots. And you know what happened to them? Well, what happens to any, see first word of previous paragraph, non-plural, that pokes their nose where their noses shouldn't be, especially when the aforementioned place their noses shouldn't be is supposed to be haunted? They die. Well, I suppose they don't die so much as they're never seen again. By anyone that legally exists, anyways. Well, I suppose the whole them never appearing again isn't necessarily the most accurate statement either. There was once a person that made it back, for a little whiles anyway. Craig Johann was his name, and he'd been an adult, just out of high school, and determined to make his name as a paranormal investigator. You know the type. Well, he'd gone in, and was gone for about a day. There was talk in the village, things being said like, "Oh, there goes another one," or, "I wonder how much he left in his car." Then he came back. Except he wasn't the same cocky man that went strutting into town, determined to discover the secrets of Lighthouse. His glasses were crooked, one of the lenses missing, and his clothing hung in rags around him. He was babbling about things no one could really discern, things about, well, I'm getting sidetracked. Richard Manson is the focus of this, and so he must stay in picture-perfect focus. Well, if that picture's been dropped in a mud puddle in the middle of a highway during rush hour, then it would be a perfect representation of that picture, which probably has nothing to do with the subject of this tale. So. Richard Manson. Well, the only reason he'd really agreed to go in the end was because Lighthouse was close to a town his girlfriend lived in. The girlfriend he'd met on the internet. Because we all know people you meet on the internet are completely trustworthy, and there is absolutely no reason at all to suspect their motives. In case you couldn't tell, that was sarcasm. Richard Manson, yes, I'm starting another paragraph with his name. If you've got a problem with it, put down the book. You're not being held at gunpoint, forced to read this, or anything. If you are, sorry, but you've probably got bigger concerns than literary repetition, such as, oh God, kid and dandruff. Richard Manson being the focus of this story that has as of yet been anything but focus. So we are going to focus. You know enough about Richard Manson to be an effective audience, and what you don't know, which, judging by the fact you picked up this book, is a lot, you'll learn along the way. What you need to know anyways.